Amidst a cheering crowd, the C919, China's first domestically produced large passenger aircraft, completed its commercial maiden flight on May 28, 2023, and officially entered the civil aviation market. The Chinese Communist Party CCP media claimed that China has finally said goodbye to the history of 800 million shirts for one plane. What does that mean? It means that at a time when China was technologically backward, it only had shirts, not planes, and had to use the profits from exporting 800 million shirts to buy a large airliner. We believe that the CCP has cheered too soon. The C919 is known as the Big National Aircraft and is manufactured by the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, COMAC. COMAC was spun off from the Chinese military as a military-related enterprise, and Beijing has invested more than $70 billion in the project. The first user of the C919 is China Eastern Airlines. It completed its first commercial flight on May 28th with flight MU9191 from Shanghai Hongqiao International Airport to Beijing Capital Airport. For the CCP, this is an event that can be used to fuel patriotic sentiments. I'm feeling very emotional. Actually, when I heard about C919's maiden flight, I spent the whole week paying attention to everything about this development. I was paying attention to when tickets go on sale and then tried to buy tickets from the moment they were released. I'm really confident in our country. It will definitely get better and better. Whether talking about core technology or comfort level, both will get better and better. The Chinese media said that the C919 passenger jet with a capacity for 192 passengers will fly on a regular commercial route from Shanghai to Chengdu, a city in southwest China.
I take flights rather frequently, and I think the seat in the middle is relatively spacious, with comfortable spacing.
We have operated over 100 hours of test flights with dozens of takeoffs and landings, and overall we feel that the aircraft is excellent. The Chinese media is spreading the message that the C919 is a masterpiece of Chinese technology and that the materials used in the C919 are world-class, if not world-leading. We have completed the entire process of independent design, manufacturing, experimentation, integration, and acquiring certification, which marks that we have ranked among the high-end manufacturers. But this is not true. First, the key technology of the C919 was stolen. In 2019, the U.S. cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike released an investigative report revealing that the C919 was obtained by the Chinese government through hacking operations to steal technology from several foreign suppliers. So far, 4 people have been arrested in the U.S. in connection with the theft of aviation technology, including Xu Yanjun, a senior official in China's Ministry of State Security. The report states that between 2010 and 2015, Chinese Ministry of State Security intelligence officials, underground hackers known as Turbine Panda, security researchers, and corporate spies hacked into foreign suppliers such as GE Electric and Honeywell in the United States and Safran in France with the apparent intent of stealing technology related to the development of the C919, such as designing new turbofan engines and other components. CrowdStrike researchers say that the China-built engine, the CJ1000AX, likely benefited from cyber espionage by the Chinese Ministry of State Security, saving it years of development time and billions of dollars in research and development funding. In 2018, the U.S. Department of Justice released a series of indictments for the theft of key aircraft technology by the CCP. The fan blade system of composite materials for the LEAP-1A engine, developed by CFM, became the target of CCP spies. In the U.S. Department of Justice indictment, a CCP intelligence officer, Xu Yanjun, used aliases, cover companies, and false documents to obtain GE secrets through an intensive hacking campaign targeting a GE aerospace engineer specializing in jet engine design. When things went wrong, she was extradited to the U.S. for trial and sentenced to 20 years in prison for espionage. Thus, it is not surprising that the C919 developed by COMAC is almost identical in appearance to the European Airbus A320 being manufactured in Tianjin. So much so that China's CCTV mistakenly implanted an A320 image when showing footage of the C919. Despite all the efforts by the CCP and the technology it has acquired, Chinese companies have yet to master the core technology of the aircraft. In late May, Bonnie Glaser, senior advisor for Asia at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, posted this image. This chart analyzes the C919's use of major components from the US, the United Kingdom, and other countries. Scott Kennedy of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, wrote in a late 2020 report that calling the C919 a Chinese aircraft was misleading because almost all of its components, including those that enable the aircraft to take off, are imported. According to Airframer, U.S. companies account for almost 3/5 of the C919's major suppliers, with another third coming from Europe. Only 14 of the major suppliers are from China, 7 of which are Chinese foreign joint ventures. These Chinese suppliers mainly provide the relatively simple technology of the fuselage, wings, tail, and interior parts, which account for only 25% of the overall aircraft cost. Without Western engines and avionics, China could not have made it. The real challenge isn't building the aircraft. The real challenge lies in the engine and avionics, which are like the muscle and brain of the aircraft. Otherwise, it would be like building an aluminum tube with the national flag painted on the tail. The CCP authorities have always regarded the development of the aerospace industry as a strategic goal. Among the 10 key areas of the Made in China 2025 plan, one of the goals is that by 2025, China's global market share of general aircraft will reach 40%. In the 2015 CCP government work report, for the first time, aero engines and gas turbines were included in China's national strategic emerging industries. Over the past 20 to 30 years, the CCP has used its market appeal to build the aviation industry through market for technology cooperation with Western technology. In an attempt to achieve its goal of becoming independent in the aviation field, although the C919 made its first commercial flight, there is still a big gap compared to Boeing and Airbus aircraft. In the changing international environment, the CCP's dream of aviation hegemony will not only become more difficult, but might become another major bottlenecked item after the chip. Aviation experts say that COMAC faces fierce competition from Boeing and European Airbus. For many years, these two companies have dominated global aircraft sales. Airbus operates about 13,000 aircraft worldwide, while Boeing has more than 10,000 aircraft. Chinese official media said that as of January 2023, the number of orders for the C919 was close to 1,200, and the annual production capacity is expected to reach 150 aircraft in 5 years. Currently, orders or letters of intent for the COMAC C919 are mainly from domestic airlines in China, many of which are state-owned or directed by the state. The CCP's strategy seems to rely on the domestic market to boost the C919 and nurture and develop it so it can eventually compete with Europe and the US. COMAC is currently planning to produce 150 C919s per year, but analysts are skeptical of its production capabilities, especially since production of the C919 has been delayed for years to begin with. The original delivery date for the C919 was the end of 2015, but as we have seen, it took nearly 7 years for this delivery to be completed. So even with the orders in place, COMAC's ability to deliver them is still questionable. On June 1st, Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun told reporters that it would take a long time for the C919 to build up enough production capacity in China to meet domestic demand. As for breaking into the international market, there's still a long way to go for C919. Data from Cerium, an aviation data provider, shows that out of more than 4.1 million scheduled domestic flights in China in 2022, about 42% used Boeing aircraft and about 54% used jets made by Airbus. By 2030, China is expected to need about 4,800 single-aisle jets. If COMAC can increase the production of the C919, it may gain a share of the market, but it will still lag behind Boeing and Airbus. Both Boeing and Airbus have decades of experience in driving technological advances in areas such as efficiency, noise, and sustainability, and integrating these technologies into their manufacturing, regulatory, and approval processes. The C919 isn't as competitive because it has great fuel consumption, but no overseas sales and service network, and it isn't self-sufficient in key components, all of which make it hard to attract international buyers. Another noteworthy detail is that although the C919 uses a foreign supply chain, its quality and safety are not reassuring. In modern aviation, the safety of passenger aircraft is more important than any other property. China's CCTV has reported that Wu Guanghui, an academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering and chief designer of the C919, experienced the flight himself and managed to save costs for the C919's development. The report said the current large aircraft have 5 sets of rangefinder receivers, but Wu Guanghui found that in real flight, 3 sets are enough. So the domestic C919 is equipped with only 3 sets, and it is said that eliminating the 2 sets can save several hundred million yuan. Yes, the CCP specialists always seem to be so clever. It's hard to imagine a freshly minted C919 based on what has come to the conclusion that 3 sets of rangefinders would be sufficient. This is like a new driver driving on the road and finding 2 brakes, one is a foot brake and one is a hand brake. Maybe he thinks it is a waste, so he removes 1 brake. Does this kind of academic mindset scare you? Because what has been sacrificed by the Chinese Communist officials is the safety of people's lives in exchange for some monetary savings. That's why some Chinese netizens wrote the following comments. It's a pity that the Nobel doesn't have a prize for being the most clever. He actually discovered something that no other advanced country did for decades. It's really great. In the future, China will train a group of pilots who can measure the distance with the naked eye and save hundreds of billions of dollars for the country by eliminating the need to install rangefinders on planes, which is another great innovation of China after the hand-engraved chips. Others said, how fast and economical. Tofu Dregs project, I have given it a name, aerial hearse. Others suggested, let the leaders ride it first. The CCP's plan of Made in China 2025 shows that it has a dream. That is, to fight for the top position of international aviation, to make China's COMAC equal to Airbus and Boeing. But in reality, this dream is plagued with problems. As mentioned earlier, because of the limitations of the C919 design, its fuel consumption and mileage energy consumption aren't comparable to those of similar products from Airbus and Boeing. Coupled with the cost, maintenance, upgrade, and other bottleneck issues, the likelihood of the C919 breaking into the international market is relatively low. A more critical issue is, given the unstable relationship between the CCP and the West, whether COMAC will be able to secure the key components needed to build the C919 from the West, as well as after-sale services. These are factors that international buyers will have to consider. Boeing's 787 Dreamliner in the US is a product of a collaboration between a dozen countries. However, the C919 is in a different position than the Boeing 787. Neither Boeing in the US nor Airbus in Europe is at risk of a supply disruption, and neither company has any international political risk. When the US-China relationship is good and economic and trade relations continue, and when the Taiwan Strait, East China Sea, and South China Sea are calm, COMAC will be supplied with these key components. In such a time, of course, the US won't prohibit China from buying US aircraft because it will buy European Airbus aircraft otherwise. Moreover, if the US doesn't want to lose the Chinese market, then selling parts is not a bad option. But if the international political environment changes suddenly, when China is in conflict and military confrontation with the West, then the supply of aviation components will be at risk. At that point, the CCP would have no way to produce new aircraft and no parts to maintain the old ones. The avionics, control systems, and power systems of the aircraft in flight could be disrupted at any time, causing all of the CCP's C919s to collapse immediately. With the current war between Russia and Ukraine and the tensions in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea, the possibility of a further decoupling between the US and China, an aggravated confrontation, and a military conflict have all greatly increased. Another factor is that the C919 is part of Xi Jinping's technological ambition to lead the 21st century. The CCP's past behavior and mindset have been that technology learned from various fields will eventually be transferred to military applications. Whether the CCP will militarize civil aviation technology is also a question that the US and its allies would be wary of. The Biden administration is already restricting the CCP's access to advanced semiconductors and has imposed broad sanctions on major Chinese technology companies. Right now, these sanctions are largely supported by Europe. Communist China's state subsidies, government ownership, centralized procurement agencies, forced technology transfers, and alleged intellectual property theft drove the US and Europe to settle a nearly 17-year dispute over aircraft subsidies in June 2021. The headline in the New York Times at the time was US and EU and aviation trade spat and turned to China's rise. According to the report, the US and Europe have committed to working together to create a level playing field in global aviation and to work together to determine the conditions for fair competition and acceptable levels of state support in the aerospace sector. The settlement of the dispute allows the US and Europe to focus on addressing the threat posed by the emerging Chinese commercial aircraft industry. If the US-China relationship were to fully deteriorate, a war were to break out in the Taiwan Strait, and the international landscape were to change dramatically, the US and its allies would likely impose immediate sanctions, embargoes, and supplies would be cut off, and the C919 would be reduced to a pile of scrap metal. It can be said that the CCP, while pursuing the vanity of great power, has unknowingly spent a lot of money creating another great bottleneck project that can become easily stuck.